Welcome to CMMS Radio, a podcast and general resource for all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, from selection to implementation to help you make better choices and have a successful CMMS journey. We'll bring in experts along the way to help us learn more about CMMS, facilities operations, and much more. If you need help with the CMMS project, send a message at CMMSradio.com using the What's on Your Mind link. Suggest a topic, share your CMMS story, or ask questions. This episode is sponsored by Upkeep, purpose-built for maintenance, reliability, and operations teams. Our mobile-first CMMS and asset operations management solution puts work orders, inventory, and asset info in the palm of your hand. Designed for ease of use and adoption, Upkeep aligns your team for peak business performance. Transform your operations. Transform your success with the multi-platform solution of Upkeep. Visit upkeep.com/CMMSradio to receive a dedicated custom discovery session. Thanks for tuning in. Today we are joined by the author of Facilitating with Finesse and Communicating to Decision Makers, J.D. Solomon. He has an extensive background in the maintenance and reliability space. Six Sigma Black Belt, Certified Reliability Engineer, Certified Maintenance and Reliability Professional, the coveted CMRP credential. By the way, anybody that wants to grab that and needs a course, hit me up with a direct message and I'll get you a discount to the best course on the planet. He has the education and experience to drive value. J.D. Solomon, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Great to be here. My mom's very proud of my resume.
And I've looked at that and some of the other things that I've read. I talk to a lot of people in the industry and they all know who you are. So for me, this is awesome because when we bring people in from the maintenance community that really get it, I know that we're probably going to help at least one person with some of the stuff that we chat about. And the place that I really wanted to start is, first of all, pleasure to have you on. I definitely want to discuss your journey story, and we want to gain some insights from your many years in this space. So I'd love to hear how this all started. And I'm also interested in the influence from your family because there's a history and a lineage there where you had those so those influences. So if you could share about that, that would be great.
Great. So I'm the grandson of a head mechanic of a Dodge dealership. And that grew up on his knee watching NASCAR and helping fix cars and watch him do his business. My father went off and worked for a power utility company, so he was kind of the engineering side of what I did. And his best friend, I'm a Baptist, but he's like the godfather to me. He was a developer, so it really launched me into that space where if there was a maintenance problem, an engineering problem, or a construction problem, I got kind of thrown into it early. And that's where it all began. And I've just tried to keep it practical my whole career because that's my roots, right? As you said, Greg, That's my roots. So
that's some people would say you can't escape it, but a lot of people would say that's what it's all about because everything grows from there, right?
Yeah, it does, and you really can't escape it because what happens is because you have the understanding and know how the different people think and what they want out of their different jobs and perspectives, you get thrown in when there's a problem. And at the same time, you want to go in and help. But it really is sometimes when everybody else is running out, you're the one they send in. And but I like it. I like it a lot. It's been fun.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing, I was typing up my notes and doing all my research and all these things. I'm positive that you've seen a ton, like all these different CMMS platforms. And I don't like to talk about any specific ones, so we'll leave the names out. But what I wanted to ask is like things like implementations, experience with the different platforms, and some of the horror stories. What do you think are the most common barriers to CMMS implementation and adoption success without, of course, naming any systems?
Right. And I think at one point I'd gotten up to about 24 systems that I'd worked with as a consultant to either evaluate or implement or, quite frankly, to come in and fix because they weren't working very well. I think the number one problem, and this will sound funny, not picking on my software providers, but software is cheap. And so people rush in, they don't do their evaluations, they don't really look at how they're going to use it because they can buy the software. There's labor costs that dwarf the software cost. And there's also hardware costs. Your networks and everything have got to be configured. And I just see a lot of people just, I'm going to buy a system, it's going to fix everything. And then they get it and they go, wow, this is a lot more than I thought it was going to be.
That's so common, and I don't think it's really going to change. We just have to keep kind of running at it, talking about it like this, and letting everybody know out there that if you're in a situation like that, get some help. Don't panic. Find someone like yourself that can kind of dig in and help you understand where you're at, because you might be a lot closer to success than you think. And one of the things around that question is, culture, mindset, maintenance mindset. What is maintenance mindset, and how does culture play a role in that being something that can influence the success of your CMMS implementation and adoption?
Yeah, I think a couple of things I'll say. I think it's never this will never end, but it's that cowboy mentality, right? We all get rewarded for rushing in and fixing things and pat on the back and keeping things resilient. And so we tend to get rewarded short term there, no matter what industry I'm in. And then that kind of de-emphasizes you need to do your paperwork, right? Because nobody really wants to do. They want to do the job, but they don't want to do the paperwork. And you've got to teach people that paperwork is really half the job. And it's I say that it's a little extreme to say it that way, but I want to get people's attention because you've got to know with the paperwork. Now the other thing I see, second thing is we get all this great data. We start collecting data, and I'm a reliability engineer too. But senior management never looks at the reports. And so when I'm down here at the real functional level, helping people put the systems in or use it, they're like, nobody's looking at it. And so when you talk about culture, the culture's got to go all the way to the top that what we're trying to do here is important. And if the executive team doesn't think it's important, then, I've been the guy down there putting the data in. I'm not going to put it in if the guy above me is not looking at it. So
Oh
I would say,
my.
I'd say that's kind of the cultural perspective on both ends.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. And when you were saying that, I'm like thinking about other scenarios I've been in where whether I'm helping somebody or I have to use something that maybe I don't want to, but then I learn about it and they do something like, really empower me with the why. And then I buy in and then I go and do it only to find, 6 weeks later I've been doing all this stuff, and then the people that wanted me to aren't using it. They're not looking at it. They're calling and saying, "Hey, what about this? What about that? When did this happen?" And I'm like, "Are you not just? Can you just look in the system? I mean, I put nice notes in there and this and that, and you don't even look at it. You just call me or you text me or you email me, and it's like, what's the point? I know the value now because you got me to buy in on the why. It made a difference to me, and I was like." That's cool. I'll do that paperwork for that. That makes sense. And then I see they don't even look at it. It's like, why am I doing this? So that that reminds me of this other thing. There's this, if you, not necessarily you, but like if someone listening can work on connecting, like maintenance to the business as a whole, so we stop treating it as a cost. We know there's a cost, everything has a cost, it doesn't matter, but if we can do a better job of that and start making that a priority, you get more full integration into the organization, so that there might be a little bit extra support from leadership where they're actually participating and saying, "Oh, these KPIs are great." And maybe they should go and sit with somebody and say, "Hey, I see my KPIs, but what are you doing that creates those?" Just so they know just a little bit. What do you think of that?
I like that. I think it's KPIs, but let me share a story from the Society of Maintenance and Reliability and Engineering Conference I was at a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I did two workshops, and the first one was how to do business, how to get senior management to understand your business cases. And I thought, that's a little businessy. We may not have all the SMRP members interested. We had 40 people register and come to it because what they recognized is they weren't able to speak the language of senior or executive management, whether it was KPIs or what I say is money, right? Everything's got to be money. It can't be long term money. It can't be even performance sometimes. It's like, is this really helping the bottom line or not? And
Yeah.
And so it really is an indicator that we need to be able to quantify and show people what this really means up the line. And I think we all struggle with that. I think I struggled with it early in my career. And then later on, I wrote a couple books about it, right? The communicating book you mentioned earlier,
Yep.
uh, we could talk about the motivation behind it, but it really was this gap that existed with all kinds of technical professionals, but really maintenance and reliability professionals of how do you communicate risk and reliability up the line, you know?
Yeah.
So,
It's
and that's been like a curse too, by the way, Greg. It's been one of those things that follows me around. That it's not really how I make most of my money, but
right.
it's always something that everybody kind of wants a little bit.
Of course, of course. And what you're doing there is you're almost you're almost like between the book, your insights, if you're on a consulting project, you're you're really acting as an intermediary with all these things to kind of decipher or make that communication more in line for both. I'm going to say sides of the house. The thing I don't like about that is we know that they're in conflict and competition and all that, and they're so damn close to being aligned and connected. And it's things like this that can actually improve that. So when somebody sits through one of your workshops or a presentation like you're doing at SMRP and some of the other big conferences out there, there's going to be a couple of people in there, a lot of them that have some nice, useful, real, and practical takeaways, and if they go and put those into play back at their organization on the maintenance floor, plant floor, facilities ops, whatever it is, there's going to be some slight improvement, and that's what needs to happen constantly. So I would also encourage people that when they have any little bit of success with that, keep doing it and don't expect it to change overnight, but don't expect it to change if you're just going to sit around.
Yeah, and to the KPIs when I work with people, I do a lot of work with preventive maintenance programs. I do a lot of work with how to get them on dashboards. I do a lot of thing with problem cause remedy and root cause analysis. But to be able to go in and work with folks to say this will be what these people up here will want to see, and let's work on this first and make it easier for them to appreciate. I mean, that insights and that experience that not just me but my whole firm has to go in and do that for people. That's where the satisfaction and the practical stuff is, right? Um,
Yeah, and there's another thing you mentioned early on and a couple of other times where we're talking about money. And so for me, having been a CMMS provider and dealt with so many different people to, qualify the system, figure out exactly what their problem was, can we actually solve it, all these different things. I've always felt, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I've always had this kind of idea that if you get the money right, like what you charge to do this, what they charge to do that, if you get that right, you can then move that out of the picture and focus on your work. And there's a big challenge there when you've got CMMS providers that want to sell software, that's their job, but we really know that they're supposed to solve problems. And then customers are out there trying to sift through these hundreds of platforms out there, and I just think in some ways the money part of it doesn't always land with the people involved, like on both sides.
well, and I back up, and it's kind of blasphemy maybe to the CMMS providers, but they're relational databases. Most software, if you get some things do other things better than others. If you explore it, that software will do what you want it to do. But what you can't do is get caught up in because everybody's trying to sell something and add something on, and we do AI and we do dashboards. You got to really get that right sized and get management thinking this is saving the organization money, and they'll give you more money to do things with your software. But we get so involved with this system is better than that, or this one didn't work and that one didn't. And honestly, what I find is when I go and analyze, I don't know your experience, but most of these systems do a lot more than the users think it can. The
Mhm.
training has fallen so far down that people tell me this can't do that. And I'll go, let me show you how this works. And they go, wow, we didn't know that. And I go, yeah, man, you're not spending the time you need inside the system with that, with the training and the awareness, right?
Seen it. I've seen it so often that I expect it,
Yeah.
and the number of times I might have had a client reach out and they're trying to do something, or they're talking about difficulty they're having with the platform, only for us to find out that we absolutely do that. And I show them how. And all of a sudden, a week later, I'm getting a phone call or I'm hearing back, oh, so and so in training worked with me and we got this all figured out. And it was all because they didn't do the training or they didn't understand it quite right, correct, whatever term you want to use. And what's interesting about what you said there, JD, is I think there's this huge like constraint that just lives on us and around us in our organizations. We've got so much to do, and then we're looking at, oh, well, I need to learn more about this. I'm going to try to figure it out myself. And now you've cooled yourself to making this a success, and you certainly don't have the time to go and do the training. However, I think what you're saying is if we would take a little bit more time, maybe even not all of our time, but at least a little bit of it, with a dedicated focus on training for this, this, and this, and then maybe occasional reinforcement training, we're going to do better. And then you can get to some of those bigger, more advanced features on a platform later on down the line. I think that's okay too. I mean, do you think that time constraint and the pain of doing the implementation and the training and onboarding properly is what hurts at the client level?
It does, and I think it goes back to where we started. We don't evaluate it. I'll go in and
Mm,
look at people and say, "Well, where is your?" I hate to say governance. It sounds like a formal word, but where is your little group of people that really are the business owner of this? And they go, "Man, we just thought we could just kind of do this on our own, but we really need almost a full time person and a couple other people." I'm like, "Yeah, that should have been programmed in to begin with, and then you can look at your training." Kind of related to that, I've got a client I'm working with now that I've worked with for 20 years, but they've done a good job training their frontline people, this major CMMS system.
hmm
But they've let their foreman type, their supervisor training on the system slip. So
mm,
what's happening is as the people are moving up the line, they're pretty good, but they get up here and it's all word of mouth. And so now the supervisors don't know what the system will do, and they're not trained in the current version. And what we've had to do is say we need regular and refresher training at the functional level. But when people get up in the supervisor roles, we need the same kind of training to keep up.
yeah.
Um, but they're struggling because they don't have the resources lined up, as you say. They're in a dogfight every day, and they just don't have the people to do that. So
100%. 100%. What we used to do that I think is really similar to what you were just talking about was we would take the train the trainer philosophy and apply it to every client, and then depending on their level of complexity with frontline workforce, supervisors and managers, and then C-suite, we would want to define some of those key players in each of those areas and work with them on the regular, but train them for what they really need to do for their role, and then relate it to why that matters to frontline workforce, why that matters to, say, for example, somebody in operations that's not doing like physical work, but they're actually tracking and monitoring. And you said something about the resources and having dedicated staff to manage this for everybody. Computerized maintenance management software, system, solution. It is a tool. And just like any other tool, it's going to perform based on the people that are using it, that are bringing that tool to do a specific job in a specific way. And that has to be part of what you do. You do it with your other systems, you do it with your other departments, but maintenance far too often is looked at differently. And then the people themselves, they're the ones that are doing the work. The CMMS is not, hey, let me get one and all of a sudden we're going to hit this magic button. It's going to do a bunch of stuff for us. That's not how it works. You got to
no,
set it up. You got to set it up properly. You got to do a little bit of a small setup, verify, then go big, then verify again, and set up schedules. It's really simple. You do a quarterly review with your account manager, do a biannual review with this person at your CMMS provider. And if your CMMS provider can't do that or can't deliver on that, find a consultant that knows that system and they'll help you out one way or
well,
another.
yeah. And one of the things we do on our quarterly audits and a lot of the programs I set up is we've moved away just from auditing. But when we bring people in, instead of just saying this work order looks bad or this data's not right, we give them the situation and say, now each one of you do your work order and let's compare them. Right. And what we see
Ah,
is again, it's a form of training, but it's that hands-on training where they learn. and you go, man, that's better than just showing them. People learn by doing, and
Oh
and
yeah.
let everybody write a different work order on the CMMS and see what they do. And it's amazing how different they'll be depending on who trained them or what level of documentation was put in front of them or whatever it is.
Yeah, and then you gather it all up, you compare it, and then everybody gets to go along on that ride and say, now here and here, this is good, this is good, this is good, but we can drop these two words and let's flip this, and now we're getting lots of similarity. And some people might say, well, I just want to say it the way I say it. I say, that's cool, water cooler or whatever, but we need some level of standardization on all of these things. But I love that you're almost treating it like an interactive workshop.
That's exactly what it is. And let me add this too. This is part of my journey, is and you and I are probably close to the same age, but we came along when that space was so valuable, and nobody wanted comment columns, and I was all into all problem cause remedy, and you get the big list, and then that doesn't work too good either, right? And over the years, I have people say you need to build a word library and just search the text. And I'm like, God, you got to train everybody. But let me tell you, Greg, with some of the AI applications in the text fields, if you teach people now to say the right words, you will really help yourself understand what's going on, even if they wrote it up wrong or bad. There's certain just keywords that pop up that they'll use. And
Yeah,
so, I've kind of moved full circle in a way to say, hey, comments aren't so bad as long as we teach people how to write their notes and talk in the same language as you just pointed out, right?
absolutely, absolutely. I think about, like, even if we take it out of the maintenance world and industry and all these great things that we're all, you know, excited and passionate about because it makes the world move. That's what really happens. I mean, if the doers and the frontline workforce and everybody that's out here that wants to do this great work aren't doing that work, you're going to have problems. And people don't usually admit that until it actually happens. And I think when we look at, like, other types of schooling, VOTEC, college, certifications, or even if you're like a journeyman and you didn't go to school, but you learned from, someone like yourself, the revisiting of that and making sure you're still on your game is also important, because we can get lazy. Don't worry about them dogs. I'll cut them out. You're on mute. There you go. Nah, nah. Here's the thing. So, CMMS radio, me, uh, all the people I know, I think, love dogs. In fact, I oftentimes think dogs are better than human beings.
Yeah. I
So,
got three beagles. They're very good dogs. They're very good breed. Hounds are, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, they're gonna let their presence be known, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I mean, we all want to do that. We just gotta. You were talking about it earlier, and I was gonna say, oh, you're talking about soft skills. Like, we want to be direct. We want to say what we mean, and then you got to kind of move that into kind of a nomenclature or lexicon that makes sense to, say, upper management and C-suite, because they don't want you in there dropping f-bombs and all that stuff.
No, and that's again broader than CMMS, but just dealing with maintenance and reliability professionals. It's I hear a lot of, I'm just too blunt. I don't know how to say it with enough thing, and it really is just. I think a lot of it is we're trained so much into hard skills, and that's where we make our money and our reputation and all that. But we get to a point when we're in our 40s or 50s, and we go, it's not really the hard skills that differentiated the guy that got up there. It's the soft skills.
Yeah.
And we need to spend just as much time working on the soft skills as we do the hard skills. But it's hard to teach us that when we're under fire and we're young and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure, for sure. And it also depends on how you react to things, and like, if people are in leadership, or maybe if they're not in leadership but they're dealing with, like, a bad boss. There's like training and courses for that. Have you ever heard of Rob Kalwarowski?
uh, yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yes, I sure have. Yeah.
Coach Rob K, and I had him on in the past, and I stay in touch with Rob, and he's got this program, and it's about a-hole bosses. Sometimes
I was going to say a hole or butthole. I didn't know which one you could say on CMMS radio, but
well, we
that's
can
how I
say
know it,
anyone we
right?
want, and then usually what I'll do is I'll go back and maybe I'll think about whether I need to bleep that word out or not. It depends on what it is. But the reason I brought that up just briefly is when it comes to leadership, it happens on both sides with the leaders themselves and the people that are being led. You're your leader of yourself. If you're dealing with a bad boss, Rob set up this thing where anybody that hears about it, learns about it from me or CMMS Radio, they can go to howtodealboss.com, find that program, click on buy now or buy it, or I forget what that says, but buy now. And then you put on this coupon code CMMS Radio, you get $50 off. Great program. A lot of people are using it. It helps them navigate that situation. And at the end of the day, bad bosses aren't bad people. So there's opportunities there. And this is kind of where we sometimes, through self-awareness, realize maybe later, right, as we get into our 40s and 50s, that that didn't really work. Personally, I'm not good at it, man. I have to really watch myself once things get heated, and I have to just kind of step away and just put that smile on and go, yeah, I think you're right. Let me think about that. I got to get you a response instead of just responding.
And that's one of the things we teach in those communication workshops I do is the you're communicating up, and while you think the boss is faking it till they're making it or they're idiots or whatever, you do work for them. And so it is incumbent on you to get that communication right. It's kind of one way when you're going up. And I think we think sometimes the bosses are bad, but sometimes maybe we're the ones that are bad. And so you've got to learn there's to have empathy and to look both directions as you try to communicate up to the boss. And I
For
think that
sure.
applies to a lot. There are a-hole bosses. Don't get me wrong, but we're quick to condemn people as a-holes too fast sometimes, and we need to take accountability ourselves a little more.
Yeah, and I think that taking that kind of agency, if you will, like I've been through some humdingers and have to look back and go, man, I could have done this, and this, and everything would have been copacetic, but instead, oh, I blew up. Oh, I called somebody out like unnecessarily. Sometimes you just got to think for a second: is what I'm about to say going to be helpful or not? And it's really cool. Communication plays. So, real quick, are there any concerning trends that are happening right now in the maintenance industry as a whole for you that like you're really like, man, this is a problem?
We talk. It reminds me as we talk about bosses, but just the whole intergenerational communication deal is the trend that I see that concerns me the most because a lot of our younger workers, I mean, a lot of companies I know are not even basing on skills or basing on aptitude. Can the people learn it? Because people aren't growing up using their hands anymore, and
Ah,
so they'll start recruiting these younger people that want to learn and be promoted in 3 months and have a different language and use internet. And guys that are getting older, like different generations, like me and you, are like, well, they need to come to me. And the truth is, we got
yeah,
to go to them a little bit too. And I just think there's a widening gap in both skills, but also in just the way we communicate and treat each other. There's the expectation you and I are going to cater up to the boss like we had to. It's a different world now if you're going to keep your young workers and stuff. So that's
absolutely.
a bothering trend that we're not addressing well enough. I don't think.
I think I think that's definitely a big one, and it reminds me of what I also think is a really big one. It's almost the same thing, and that's the skilled trades. And there's a labor shortage. There's less interest in those areas of work for careers. And I think one thing, and this has been coming up a lot lately: shop class, wood shop, metal shop, auto shop. Uh, these different kinds of classes that are more along these lines, they're less and less common in high school environments. And then when you're in a situation where, let's say, you're doing online learning or a smaller school, you can't get any exposure to that. So um, the thing I encourage people to do, it's kind of an interesting take on things, but if you want that for your kids and they're not doing it at the school, it might be challenging to get the school to bring something back in. But you might also look at your community. Find a local auto body shop and say, hey, could we bring a group of kids in one day a week or one day every other month just to observe and learn and ask questions? There's going to be community members that have these businesses that are going to say absolutely, because they already know guys like us and some that are older and even younger, they're moving on, they're retiring, and we're going to lose a lot of that that coveted knowledge, because what happened then and what's happening now and everything in between, I think, is a gold mine for everyone coming up to learn these best practices, apply this extra perspective. They can go back to how they do things, but just get a little bit of that in there so that we don't lose our capability, especially like in the United States. I mean, this is something we're so highly capable of. We've proven it time and again, but there's a great risk of a lot of that skill going away. And that's going to be a major, major problem.
I agree, but and it comes back to it's going to have to be incumbent on us, like you say, to go out and help. I don't think the schools are going to do it. I think it's going to be people like us that have to put. And again, our fathers or grandfathers didn't have to do that because we were all looking for jobs and being productive. It was just different. They didn't
Yeah.
have to come back and do it, but we're going to have to go back and do that. And kind of full circle, my grandfather died a few years ago and had all his tools, had a lifetime of tools, had every kind of tool you'd want, just tool chest full. I gave all I could to my son and my nephew, but I still had tons of tools left over. We had a hard time giving the tools away to my son's friends because a lot of them just didn't have an interest, and some of them they weren't all going to be lawyers or accountants. Some of them were going into the military or into trade schools or whatever, but they're like, yeah, I don't really need all those tools. I don't work with those things. And I'm like,
Oh man. I
and
used
it's
to
just to make your point. It's just it's just a shame. I'd have thought I could have sold them for big money, and it's just like it's really was indicative of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and to get the big money for stuff like that, you got to find guys like us that say, "Oh, I know what that is," and
Yeah,
then they're going to care like, "Oh, wow, look at this! I've seen a couple of those in my life." You go, "Yeah, that's 70 years old."
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we care about stuff like that, but we just got to keep trying. That's part of the reason, with the podcast and some of the stuff that I put out there. I'm always just hopeful that somebody random listens to it, or maybe some kid sitting next to his dad that's listening to it and go, "Oh, Dad, what's that?"
It,
That,
but
that.
but you know where they are better? They are better with the technology because they're all taught to be
Oh yeah.
gamers and I think some of the predictive maintenance stuff. And when I start trying to put that into the CMMS and use it as reliability, they are interested in that because they
Yes.
kind of want to know why they're doing something before they do it. So you can really get them involved with IR cameras and vibration meters and those kind of things. So I
Yeah.
think if there's a flip side to it, they may not know how to turn the wrenches or use a sawzall or something like that, but they know how to use the gadgets and they're not afraid of data and stuff, right? So maybe there's a plus side there too.
I like that. I like that because it's their world now, and we're just trying to be good stewards and kind of hand it off, and we're like, "Hey, guys and gals, you're missing a couple of things," and they're like, "I don't know, we don't worry about that anymore." But it'll come together. We just got to keep trying, one person at a time, right? So, other thing I wanted to ask you about is with the new technologies, Industry 4.0, AI. Are those the kind of things that excite you right now about the maintenance industry as a whole, or is it something else?
I should say yes, but I'm more old school. I
Okay.
think I think we put too many vibration meters on things and we look for too many trends. Maybe we look for correlation and not causation.
Aha.
And I think to do any kind of problem solving and any kind of diagnostics, you got to have just some experience and know what the three or four things that can go wrong. I just think everybody's hyped on AI, and I am too. I use a lot of AI. I do. I've written papers on it, done conference presentations, all that stuff. But I think we're overblowing it and doing too much of it, like it's going to solve our problems. I think it's
Yeah.
another tool, but we still got to be old school. We still got to understand how things work. And when there's a failure, these are the most probable three or four things that could have caused it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love the technologies as well. I don't necessarily adopt them very quickly, but yeah, I like to blend the old with the new, but I'm never going to be like these younger bucks that are just great with the technology. I'm a button clicker only because I have to, and I think I think there's a way forward if we just keep talking about it. So I'm excited
Yeah.
about those technologies as well.
And I think like a heart monitor. My father had a heart monitor where they put it on you for a couple of weeks, and
Hmm.
I go, hey, that's what I do with machinery. I go out now and have these mobile vibration meters that we can put on for a couple of weeks, and just that's great stuff, right?
Yeah.
but I don't need to do 1,000 of them in the wrong places, and I don't need fancy systems to collect all the data. Just every once in a while, we need to go out and make sure, just like infrared thermography and stuff, we just need to check it once in a while. We don't need to overdo it. So I
Yeah.
embrace it, but a lot of the industry 4.0, I think they think it's all going to be robots and AI, and I don't think so. I just don't buy into that all the way.
Yeah, we'll see. That's going to be an interesting one because everybody's got their concerns and other people. The reality in the maintenance industry. I just recently, I've got an episode that's going to come out probably in about 2 weeks. Um, Ryan Chan, the founder and
Yeah.
CEO of Upkeep, it was a great discussion, and there's a thing that they do there, and he's really passionate about this. It's the state of the maintenance community that he does every year, but this time he took a different approach. He jumped on meetings with all these people, like at least 100 people, and he thought that there'd be excessive concern about the technology and all these different things where people were afraid of it. It's going to change everything, and we're going to lose our jobs. And he found it was the exact opposite, kind of like what you're saying. Well, it's a tool. We've got good uses for it, but then now I'll take it away from that. These aren't Ryan's words or anybody else's. This is just me. Uh, I see it too, where it's kind of like it's oversold, and we understand that everybody's got to hit a number, but I like the concept of that I've learned from people like you and a lot of the other CMRPs in the space, that you're better off focusing on your most critical assets first. Ahead of that, make sure you get educated before you even try to select and then implement it. That's Matthew Knuth just put a post out on LinkedIn, and people won't hear this until I put the episode out, probably in December or something like that. But the point is, it's useful, but if you're putting 2,000 sensors on 2,000 assets, there's very low likelihood that that was necessary, and it was probably going to be a much smaller number, like 40 or 50 sensors on 40 or 50 pieces of equipment, the most critical. And then later on, you can amp that up when it makes sense and you get all the indicators. I want to switch to the fun questions.
Well, let me throw this one in here though
All
too.
right.
It's like I want to go back to the CMMS thing.
Okay.
It's like buying too much of a CMMS, too many bells and whistles that you don't need. I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of CMMS systems out there to do all this crazy stuff, but you really got to get it right size. And the same with the AI and the 4.0 stuff. It's good, but it's still got to be right size for your organizational capacity and what you need out of it. And software's cheap and sensors are cheap and all these talk is cheap, but it's not going to solve they're gadgets, right? They're
Yeah.
gadgets. They're not the real
Yeah.
deal there. So
And anybody out there, yeah, I kind of look around. It's really weird. Uh, Anybody out there that's like, what do you mean it's cheap? We were looking at this and it was so expensive. It's far more affordable now to implement these technologies than ever before. And if you ever are solving a problem, which is what you should be doing, you compare the impact of the problem to what the cost of solving and eliminating that problem is. And it turns out that it's a lot of times cheap or low
it,
cost, right?
and it's cheap. And why I say cheap too is it's cheap compared to the man hours, right? I can
Yes.
go out and buy a vibration meter. I can go out and vibrate a Flirt E4, whatever I want to buy. Maybe I pay $1,000 for it, but I guarantee you in labor and time, I'm gonna spend 8 or 10 times that to be trained and to use it and to keep up with it. All the things we talked about a CMMS system. I can go buy something that may cost me $50,000,
Yeah.
but by the time it's said and done, I'll probably have between me and consultants, you may have $500,000 in it. You may have 8 to 10 times that just in the labor to get it. So you're just not going to buy something cheap and throw it at it. You've got to train your people and get your workflows right and even implement it right. Just get it implemented. It costs a lot of money, whether it's internal or external, right?
Yeah. I, I
So
I love it. That's all useful. So fun stuff.
okay,
First one out of the gate, and I've been doing this on episodes lately. It's just kind of fun and it helps people get to know you. Favorite music?
probably rock. Good, the Pretty Reckless. That's the one I like.
All
I
right.
like Taylor Momsen. Good hard rock. Um, uh, love that band.
Awesome. Awesome. We love that too. That it's just music is so kind of transcendent. If if I can use a word like that. It's like a $5 or $10 word, I think.
Yeah.
um, the next question on the fun questions list is, what is your favorite sport or hobby? And it could be one that you prefer to watch versus participate, whatever it might be. Favorite sport or hobby?
Baseball. Johnny Bench fan. Used to be an old catcher. Ran youth baseball leagues forever. Travel baseball coach. Have a couple guys that made it up to the big time, to the big show in baseball. I love
Nice.
that first. Now, as I've gotten older, I've turned to surf fishing. I used to fish a lot in boats, but I kind of like to sit on the beach and drink a lot too, and just throw the rod at the coast in the surf. So, but baseball's number one. Baseball's my sport.
That'll work. That'll work. And every now and then you can probably watch some baseball while you're having a few beers and throwing that line out.
Wait for that red drum to get on that line. I can just sit back on the beach and watch a little base. Yeah, you're right.
Love it. Love it. And then what is your perspective on and how do you achieve work life balance?
Very intentionally and very, I'd say very intentionally. I mean, I've raised my kids now, but I really had to step back from my career and my ascent to coach sports and to really commit to saying my kids are only going to be in this range for 10 or 12 years at best. From the time they're 5 or 6 to the time they're 15. And I won't need more
Yeah.
to do with you after 15.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've really had to make that focus. And also, I'd say with my parents are now in their 80s and still alive, and they're in good health, but I've still got to commit to not being so caught up in work that I need to go see them real regular, just like when my kids were smaller. So I would say intentional, and I hate to say structured and disciplined, but it's like running a maintenance operation. You've got to pay attention, and it's so easy to get wrapped up in work. Work's fun to
Yeah.
me. I love the people. I love what I do. But your family's got to come first. It really does.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I was thinking of another thing where I one time I studied psychology in college. I was a late bloomer, and we get these great classes and coursework on like stress management and all these things. And yeah, we got to pass the course, but I was always looking in my courses because I was older when I went to college. I was looking for takeaways. How can I use this? How can I use this? And you mentioned something about like being disciplined or utilizing schedules. I think another thing that helps people with whether work life balance really exists or not, I don't know. I mean, I think it's up to everyone to figure out what that really is for them. But when you schedule things, it just helps you not try to figure out in a scatterbrained way or haphazard way what's coming next. And you can actually schedule that time so that it's blocked and dedicated. I knew a guy that used to go and visit his mother at the nursing home. Not that he wanted her to be there, but at some point couldn't care for the kids couldn't care for her quite well. Every single Wednesday, same time. It was like a 2 hour window without fail,
Right.
always there, and that's how you do it.
Yeah, and I think that's where baseball helped me when I was coaching. You always had a schedule. You had to be at practice, you had to be at a game. And now with my parents, I use just cutting grass. I got to go cut the grass. I don't need to cut the grass every week or every 2 weeks, but that's kind of the reason I go see them, right? But
Yeah,
it's something structured that I associate,
it's good.
that I can be structured about. To your point, yeah.
It's good stuff.
Bourbon. Yeah, you didn't ask me that. Bourbon's my favorite whiskey, right? So
Yeah,
there's a wide collection of those, but I do like some rum too. You didn't ask me that question.
yeah,
Um, I used to like blondes and brunettes, but I married a brunette, and I've been married for 33 years, so all that's good.
cool,
Dogs
cool.
is the hound dog. I love beagles. I've had bird dogs and everything else, but I love my beagles and my hound dogs.
Yeah, that's
What else?
cool.
You probably got other fun questions for me.
No, I usually keep them at those three because I try to keep the episodes because they're long form at about 40 to 60 minutes. And, some people watch the whole thing, other people pick up a little clip here and there, stuff like that. Um, and I also like to leave a little room for the next time you're on so I can have some alternate fun questions. But love the bourbon. I used to be a
Yeah,
bourbon man myself. So, uh,
I
that,
don't
that,
drink as much as I used to either. I got to admit that. As you get older, I need to slow down a little bit, and it's not good for you anyway. But I
yeah,
still
but,
like this. You don't sip on it anymore either. I just like to sip on them sometimes.
uh, Yeah, I
But
was. It's good stuff. But bourbon might be one of the best things on the planet. Bourbon and scotch, but I don't partake anymore. It's been a long time, but love to hear someone say bourbon, just bourbon, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, that's good stuff. So for everyone, if you want to get in touch with JD Solomon, he's active on LinkedIn. That's how I connected with him. And you can visit JD Solomon Inc. at jdsolomonSolutions.com. Reach out, see what they're all about. They offer a lot of things that can help you in your maintenance and reliability journey. And JD, it was great having you here. I had a blast, and I appreciate you sharing with the community so that they can have a more successful CMMS journey.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I really had a great time, Greg. This was a great little discussion we had today. Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. Thank you, JD.
Okay.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.